Have you ever heard of a tank that could level an entire city block with a single shot? Imagine a weapon so powerful it could punch through nearly 8 feet of solid, reinforced concrete. This wasn't a fantasy. It was a real-world monster forged in the final, desperate years of World War II. Meet the Sturmtiger, Germany's colossal assault gun, a beast designed for one purpose: total annihilation. The story of the Sturmtiger, or Assault Tiger, begins in the brutal street fighting on the Eastern Front, particularly during the Battle of Stalingrad. German forces found themselves needing a vehicle that could demolish heavily fortified buildings, bunkers, and strongpoints from a safe distance. Their existing infantry support guns were struggling against the sheer resilience of Soviet defenses. The call went out for a new kind of weapon, a mobile battering ram that could deliver an overwhelming payload. The German High Command wanted something that could support infantry in dense urban environments, clearing the way with brute force. Engineers turned to one of their most formidable chassis available, the legendary Tiger, a heavy tank. The Tiger's robust hull, thick armor, and reliable suspension provided the perfect foundation for this new behemoth. Stripping away the original turret, they built a massive, fixed casemate on top. This heavily armored box would house the Sturmtiger's truly unique and terrifying main weapon. The armor on this new superstructure was immense, up to 150 millimeters thick at the front, making it virtually impervious to most Allied anti-tank guns of the era. The goal was to create a vehicle that could roll right up to the front lines, withstand a barrage of enemy fire, deliver its devastating payload, and survive to fight another day. But what truly set the Sturmtiger apart was its cannon, or rather, its mortar. It wasn't a conventional tank gun designed for high-velocity, long-range engagements. Instead, it was a 380mm rocket-propelled mortar, the Raketenwerfer 61L 5.4. This weapon had a fascinating origin. It was adapted from a depth-charge launcher developed by the Kriegsmarine, the German Navy, for hunting submarines. The idea was to take this anti-submarine weapon and repurpose it for land warfare. The result was a short-barreled behemoth capable of lobbing a projectile of truly epic proportions. Let's talk about that projectile. The Sturmtiger fired a rocket-assisted shell that weighed over 800 pounds, or about 376 kilograms. To put that into perspective, that's the weight of a grand piano or a grizzly bear. Each shell was packed with a massive high-explosive charge. When this monstrous round hit its target, the resulting explosion was cataclysmic. It wasn't just about penetrating armor, it was about concussive force and pure destructive energy. Eyewitness accounts described buildings simply vanishing into a cloud of dust and debris after being struck by a Sturmtiger shell. The psychological impact on enemy soldiers must have been absolutely terrifying. The mere sight of this giant machine lumbering towards them, followed by the deafening roar of its mortar, was a weapon in itself. However, wielding this incredible power came with a host of significant drawbacks. The sheer size and weight of the ammunition created a logistical nightmare. The Sturmtiger could only carry a maximum of 14 rounds, and often carried fewer. This meant its time in combat was severely limited before it had to withdraw to a secure location to rearm. And the reloading process was a monumental task. Inside the cramped fighting compartment, the 5-man crew, a commander, gunner, 2 loaders, and a driver had to perform a grueling, 10-minute-long dance to get a single new round ready to fire. The massive shells had to be winched up from storage racks inside the hull and then painstakingly manhandled onto a loading tray. A crane was even mounted on the rear of the casemate to help lift the shells from a supply truck up into the vehicle. This slow, cumbersome process left the Sturmtiger incredibly vulnerable between shots. Firing just a few rounds could take the better part of an hour. Another major issue was the weapon's signature. Firing the 380mm rocket created an enormous backblast of flame and smoke. This fiery spectacle instantly gave away the Sturmtiger's position to every enemy soldier, artillery spotter, and aircraft in the vicinity. After firing, the crew had to quickly relocate to avoid the inevitable retaliatory fire that would rain down on their last known location. While its frontal armor was thick, its sides, rear, and top were more vulnerable, and a well-placed artillery strike or air attack could easily disable or destroy it. The Sturmtiger's combat debut came in August 1944, during one of the most tragic events of the war, the Warsaw Uprising. The Polish Home Army had risen up against the German occupation, turning the city of Warsaw into a brutal, house-to-house battlefield. To prototype, Sturmdiggers were deployed to help quell the rebellion. Here, in the dense urban landscape, the assault gun found its intended purpose. It was frighteningly effective at demolishing buildings that had been turned into polished strongholds. A single shot could reduce a fortified apartment block to rubble, burying its defenders and clearing a path for German infantry. The Sturmdiggers played a grim role in the eventual destruction of the city. Following their use in Warsaw, Sturmdiggers were also deployed on the Western Front, primarily during the Battle of the Bulge in the winter of 1944. They were organized into special assault mortar companies intended to smash through heavily defended American positions. However, their performance here was far less decisive. The Ardennes offensive was a fluid, mobile battle, a stark contrast to the static siege warfare of Warsaw. The Sturmdiggers' slow speed, high fuel consumption, and mechanical unreliability made it ill-suited for rapid advances. Its weapon, while devastating against stationary targets, had a relatively short range and poor accuracy, making it difficult to engage enemy tanks or mobile units effectively. More often than not, these mechanical giants were hampered by the terrain, broke down frequently, or simply ran out of fuel, forcing their crews to abandon and destroy them. Instead of acting as spearheads, they were often relegated to a defensive role, trying to slow the Allied advance towards Germany. But in this capacity, their slow rate of fire and limited ammunition made them largely ineffective. They were a powerful sledgehammer in a situation that required a scalpel. Ultimately, the Sturmdigger was a weapon system that was both too much and too late. Only 18 of these vehicles were ever converted from battle-damaged Tiger chassis. Production was slow, hampered by the constant, Allied bombing of German factories and the increasing scarcity of resources. By the time they entered service in meaningful, albeit tiny, numbers, the strategic situation for Germany was hopeless. The war had shifted from an offensive one, for which the Sturmdigger was designed, to a desperate, chaotic defense of the homeland. The concept of a heavy assault gun was sound, a logical evolution for urban warfare. But the Sturmdigger was an extreme solution. It was a marvel of engineering in one sense, but a practical failure in another. It represented the German tendency late in the war to focus on creating Wunderwaffen, or wonder weapons, technically impressive but complex, resource-intensive machines that could never be produced in the numbers needed to change the course of the war. They were tactical titans that had no strategic impact. Today, only a handful of Sturmdiggers survive in museums around the world, silent monuments to a desperate time. They stand as a testament to the extremes of military engineering, a perfect example of a weapon that was awesome in its power but ultimately insignificant in the grand sweep of history. It was a roar of thunder that came long after the storm had already decided its path. The story of the Sturmdigger is a fascinating look into a weapon that was, in the end, a spectacular, terrifying, and ultimately futile expression of destructive force. Thanks for watching. If you found this deep dive into one of history's most unique armored vehicles interesting, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more content. Let us know in the comments what other military marvels or misfits you'd like to see us cover next. See you in the next video.